Welcome back, everybody. Now it's time for a grassroots citizen panel. Joining me in studio is Melory Tsipouria. He is the president of the U.S.-Georgia Friendship Association, frequent guest on the show. But for our new viewers, we're not talking Atlanta, Georgia. We're talking Republic of Georgia.
Correct.
All right. Say some more.
Well,
they hear your accent, they know you're from Georgia. That's my point.
We are advocating for a strong alliance between the U.S. and Georgia and for the freedom and democracy in the region.
Okay,
and that has
good.
Nothing to do with the Atlanta Braves.
No.
All right, or Tenter.
That's right.
Also in studio is the self-described further to the left than President Obama, criminal defense attorney Alan Bloom. Good to see you, Alan.
Nice to be here, Rick.
And joining us from Washington, D.C. is the man on the street videographer for the Media Research Center, Dan Joseph. Dan, how are you?
Great, Rick. Good to be here.
And I'm glad to hear our audio is working better from that D.C. studio at the moment. All right.
Very nice in here.
Oh, very good to hear. All right, so let's start with Washington, D.C. is about to become the Wild West of lobbyists. You know, President Obama said he was putting an end to the influence of lobbyists if he were to be elected president. In fact, he put a ban on lobbyists being able to be reappointed into advisory committees, boards, and commissions. That ban is now over. And the movement to remove that ban was started by, guess who? Lobbyists. Alan Bloom, as someone that's further to the left than President Obama, you believe that government can be a source of good. Does this not dishearten you to see the man who talked about reforming government being like every other abuser of government?
You know, it gets to the point where you wonder if there's any candidate who ever becomes in the office can ever really make a difference at that level. Are they ever going to stick with what they say? Candidate Obama talked about transparency. Candidate Obama talked about the ethical requirements of this, what's going to happen when he's in office. Nobody on the right could be more pissed than I am about the fact that Guantanamo still exists, the NSA is running rampant, and we have this situation now where the rules and restrictions on lobbyists are going to be taken away, or at least diminished, and so that you have more influence in that way. It's just wrong.
Do you believe that? His support or image, if you will, is beginning to erode among those on the left?
Yeah, I think so, but the only hesitation I have is whether or not you say it's beginning to erode. Quite frankly, I think in this area, I think he's been a major disappointment. Unfortunately, I don't see the solution. Bush was, in my view, was just as bad, and I'm trying to go back historically. I have a bit of historical, because I'm old, I have a bit of historical background. I see it just happening almost in every administration. It happened in Harry Truman's administration, where the buck was supposed to stop there, and you still saw that going on.
If I may, nobody has promised in that regard as much as President Obama has.
That's a good point.
Being most transparent, and it has been the opposite.
So Bush said, I will lie to you, I will cover it up, and he...
Guys, hold on a second here.
Let's go
Are
to
you
Dan,
guys actually telling me that President Obama said something during the campaign, and then since then, he's done the total opposite thing? I don't believe you guys. I do not believe you guys at all. It's not true. 100% false. I mean, this changes everything. Well, what are we doing here? No, look, seriously though. I mean, yes, the lobbyist was something that lobbyists were something that he's vilified, and Democrats have been vilifying for many, many years in Washington, D.C. The truth of the matter is that lobbyists aren't really all that bad. They don't just represent giant corporations. They represent smaller corporations. They represent activist groups that come to Washington. I see them and talk to them all the time, and it's part of America's First Amendment right to make their voice heard to their representatives.
Yeah,
so
but they shouldn't be moving back and forth between government.
It's another broken promise.
Yeah, but the difference is...
It's another broken promise by President Obama, but at the same time, it is part of government for better or for worse.
I agree with Alan Bloom. The difference here, though, Dan Joseph, is moving back and forth from being a lobbyist to being put on an advisory board and commissions within government. There's the conflict.
Yeah.
Mallory, you want to say something?
Well, the truth is, though, that many lobbyists are actually experts in the field of the government that they end up going into. And I think I kind of agree with one of the points that President Obama made, is that they need some of those areas of expertise, especially President Obama. He needs more experts to give them advice and to advise them on some of the important issues.
All right, let's go to Mallory. I know you're itching to jump in. The best money government can buy, that's what Dan Joseph says.
I agree with Dan's point. Point has been different about broken promises. He promised so much, and he changed virtually on everything, or on most of them. So.
Alan, you want to final word?
It's only that, you know, I look at this less as a political party situation. My disgust has to do with the fact that it's very difficult to find somebody who's going to stand true to their beliefs. At some point in time, isn't there an end to the compromise? When you get to be president of the United States and in your second term, isn't it the time when you can say, I'm going to do what I think is right?
Yeah, you know, and Dan, I was poking fun of you a little bit there, but I understand what you're saying. It's you know, we're talking about experts, we're talking about freedom of speech. But Alan's point is a valid one in that you make a promise, you get people enrolled in who you are, and you do the exact opposite. A guy's not up for re-election. Yeah,
I mean,
right?
Obama, and one of the reasons he did this, at least it's being reported, is that he wanted more environmentalists wanted more access to him, groups like the Sierra Club. So,
all right.
To scratch your back and you scratch mine kind of thing.
All right. Well, JV,
in some cases.
and ISIS was also a JV basketball team. All right. We'll continue with our. You remember that quote, right? I mean, he's just all over the map. We'll continue with more on our Grassroots Citizen panel. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody. We're in the middle of our Grassroots Citizen panel, and one of the key topics right now is that pro-Russian separatists, all of a sudden, those aggressive pro-Russian separatists are saying, time out, we want a truce. And, of course, Vladimir Putin wants to send in relief supplies and so forth to the pro-Russian separatists. The Ukrainian government says we don't trust Putin. He's sending weapons. We just don't trust him. I don't know what's going on. If I'm in Ukraine, I have no reason personally to trust Vladimir Putin, especially after he shot the Malaysian airliner out of the sky. I'm not saying him personally, but he has his fingerprints all over that, as well as an airliner from your home country, Georgia, as well as an airliner from Poland. He's got this all over. His track record.
He cannot be trusted, and he must not be given way out. He kind of cornered himself. I'm afraid invasion is not just possible, it's probable, because he has no way out. His hardliners are pressuring him. But as a West, we have to keep the pressure. Again, as I have said before, Crimea should be the #1 demand, to get out of Crimea. And the sanctions, last time they announced the third round of sanctions, but they are not strong enough. Just a few days ago, ExxonMobil and Russian Rosneft oil giant signed agreement about some exploration, I believe, in Baltic Sea. Regardless when that's going to, take effect, but it's a wrong image to send in the middle of this crisis. U.S. large firm is signing with a Russian and using that to diminish kind of effects of sanctions.
Here we have.
We can do much more, Rick. We can prohibit dollar transaction with Russian companies. We can make Russian economy collapse within a month.
Within a month?
Yes.
Before we go to Alan Bloom, let me ask you. Some are calling this the Archduke Ferdinand moment. That was that moment in history, of course, which World War I broke out. Is this that critical?
Well, I mean, it's critical as far as the possibility and the danger of it, but as far as the reasons of the conflict, there was no problem in the Crimea. I've been in Crimea dozens and dozens of times. There was no problem between Russian and Ukrainian population.
I know
it was just artificially made up, just like he did in Georgia, in those two breakaway regions of Georgia, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia. So it's not started with Putin, because those breakaway regions were 20 years ago.
Right.
But this is the Russian politics, and we must stop that. And it did not start with Putin, but it must end.
Alan Bloom, I cannot. You just returned from Ukraine a few months ago. What I can't understand is why President Obama and Vladimir Putin can't pick up the phone and say, let's figure this one out.
I'll tell you, my unofficial, incredibly unofficial poll has to do with cab drivers and workers in bars and restaurants.
It's a good barometer, by the way.
And I'm telling you, the folks there hated the graft that was going on and hated the government. Remember, this was the pro-Russian government when I was still there. It was before that he had been moved out. They hated the complete graft. They didn't hate Russia, and the Ukrainians didn't hate Russia, and the people who were from a Russian descent didn't hate the Ukrainians.
Right.
It wasn't like that.
I happen to know that.
It happened to be a dispute about this particular guy who was the Russian puppet, who was was just stealing and stealing and stealing. That was really the problem. So that's why I don't think there's going to be that that linchpin, this going to be the fuse that's going to set it off, because you don't have that underlying turmoil. I don't think so.
All right, let's switch gears now. Let's go to Dan Joseph in Washington. Dan Joseph, an amazing story. It's mind-boggling. You can't. This is like out of a sci-fi movie, or certainly a political thriller. It's now been revealed that for over 20 years, an Amtrak secretary, I said Amtrak, I didn't say CIA, an Amtrak secretary was paid over $1 million to give confidential passenger information to the DEA. What is up with that? That should be troubling to all Americans.
I mean, yeah, that should be a problem. He was spying for the DEA. It's, in one sense, maybe there was a drug trafficking ring on the Amtrak trains. I don't really know. I'm not really familiar with the story. But again, it sounds like typical government bureaucracy at work. You know, a few years ago, there was an idea to actually privatize Amtrak. In a sense, you know, I mean, government collusion, probably not the same thing, but at the same time, Amtrak doesn't make any money. It's not run particularly well. I can tell you that from going from Washington to D.C. to New York City. And I think that, in a sense, it's a very, very good symbol of the bloated government bureaucracy here. And privatization would make it much more efficient and much better.
Let's go to Alan Bloom. I feel this falls right into your comments earlier about the NSA and intrusion into our personal lives. The government.
Well, what was astounding to me as I read this story, and by the way, you're about 140 grand off. It was only 860,000 in that, but okay, it spread over 20 years. So some agency was paying 45 grand a year for the last 20 years to get information, which they could have gotten for free. NSA could have apparently DEA is in. Not, I said NSA. DEA is in an organization with Amtrak, trying to keep in a joint task force, and all they had to do was turn to them to get it. But when they paid the money, then they could get it undercover, and they wouldn't have to announce that they were getting it. And maybe that's some sort of scam in a way of trying to in law enforcement or something like that. But it sounds just so ridiculous.
Does it trouble you?
Yeah, well, all these sorts of things trouble me. But I got to tell you, Rick, you think big government and small government make a big difference. Just go to small cities in California. We have a guy who's just going to jail for 25 years in Bell, California, who stole like $1 zillion.
That's right.
So it's government somehow. It's not always big government or small government.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. I want to thank our grassroots citizen panel criminal defense attorney, self-described further to the left than Barack Obama, but a critic of Barack Obama on today's show, Alan Bloom. I want to thank Melory Tsipouria, president of the U.S.-Georgia Friendship Association, and the man on the street videographer for the Media Research Center, Dan Joseph from D.C. Thank you for being part of our panel. And I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. We are right back at you again tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific.